Hello and welcome to another episode of Think Development Out Loud. Today we will be discussing the African Women Playwrights Network, which was established in 2015 by Dr. Yvette Hutchison, a reader in Theatre and Performance Studies at the University of Warwick, in collaboration with Amy Jeffna, a South African play and film writer. We're also joined by Dr. Tosin Tume, who is both an artist and a lecturer in the Department of Theatre and Media Arts at the Federal University, Ekiti State in Nigeria.
So you consider yourself a theatre goer? Have you ever seen a play written by an African woman? Why do you think that is? In 2015, researchers at Warwick University began the African Women's Playwrights Network to connect African women playwrights with each other and with the world.
Theatre in Africa is brilliant and is genuine.
There's so much the African continent has to offer.
African Women Playwright Network is trying to close that gap and saying, yes, we have women storytellers.
And so I think for the first time, people who own those narratives can tell those narratives from their own voices.
So theatre goer, is it now time for you to see a play written by an African woman?
As you've seen from the brief video of the project, our aim really was to connect artists with one another, with researchers and with other stakeholders like programmers, training, because we found that there were many women doing wonderful things in the field, but with very little access to training, because there are no schools unless you go to university, to one another, and researchers really struggled to find the material because very little was published. In fact, there's only one anthology of plays by African women that had been published, and that in 2009. So we set out to try and remedy that in a way that could both support the women and become a platform for us to have conversations around the research I wanted to do. So the real question was how to do this, given the huge space issues of Africa, time issues, and of course resources, financial and other resources, how to do this. And I noticed that there was a huge growth in the use of social media in Africa and platforms that were using really cheap formats of low data Wi-Fi. So I approached Amy Jeffna, an artist in South Africa who had worked with Everyone Mobile, a South African UK company, and we decided to build a purpose-built application that could help us discover, highlight and network these women, while also creating platforms whereby we could share research questions. They could help me develop them in a reciprocal manner, so that the research was not led simply by me, but was actually part of a decolonizing approach whereby we co-created knowledge and the artists could remain in control of their information and their knowledge. And this was really important, both in terms of understanding the women's creative processes and aesthetic choices, which was part of my research question, but also for them to gain something out of the research and break very colonial approaches to privilege in the research context. And we also needed to develop trust. So although the online platform worked really well, we found it was limited at a certain point. We had to create face-to-face engagements so that we could start building trust, collaborations, and break down some of the prejudices of colonialism, which divided people and thereby controlled them. And so we created embodied workshops that were run by the artists themselves, and they participated in various ways in creating work, including the plays that they were developing. Tosin, you attended these symposia. You were also one of the first artists to join the network. What was your impression about our methodologies and approaches, and how this affected the way the network has developed and grown?
One thing that resonates with me about the 2017 symposium is a question that was posed to me at one of the workshops. The question was, what are you afraid of writing and why? You know, and immediately the idea of the issue of the abducted Chibok and Dapchi girls in Nigeria, you know, with the Boko Haram insurgency just came to me. It was an issue that I wanted to write about, but I was scared because, well, the issue is about Northerners and Muslims. I am a Southerner and a Christian, and I asked myself, I tormented myself actually, that was it my story to write? But at that workshop, I was told how to go about it, and I did. And I wrote the play. It's titled The Victims, and the play won the award of the Best Association of Nigerian Authors Drama Award last year. I was called upon in 2019 to become one of the steering committee members, and I gladly accepted. And we've been trying to shape up um, what the network is about. We have long-term goals, we have short-term goals. We are looking to have a festival, you know, that will bring together female playwrights, African female playwrights, and we'll produce plays by these women, and then we'll talk about them. Coming together that way and connecting that way is something that I've never heard of it anywhere. So I think it's going to be huge. And we are also thinking of creating a database for African female playwrights where our members are logged on, and we anybody that needs a play treating any topic or issue can just log in and search, and will have access to such information. This and many others are what we are working on. Being a member of the committee has been both exhilarating and challenging. We've had to learn new skills, you know, even though we were provided mentors in the area of business plan and how to manage our activities on social media. We we are four with Yvette leading. That's me and Neil Kebiditswe and Feliswe Trintra. We meet regularly on social media. We have WhatsApp groups and Facebook. We have an Instagram page. So we meet, we discuss, and we brainstorm. We come up with ideas, what can work, what wouldn't. I think the most challenging thing for us has been the COVID-19. We were supposed to meet sometime this year in July at Berlin. You know, everything was sorted, but COVID came and, well, we couldn't meet. And that's a huge blow on our network, but we are not relenting. We are still having our online meetings, and we are planning to have a meet and greet with our members. Also, I I discovered that we have more female playwrights in the academia in Nigeria. What we have in the professional sector in Nigeria are script writers. They write basically for the screen, and they are reluctant to identify with uh, uh, writers who write for stage, playwrights. So I'm trying to bridge that gap, and let them know that we are okay. We are basically doing the same thing, but via different mediums. I'm about to create a WhatsApp group where we can gather for, female playwrights in Nigeria, so that we can work towards that festival which we are planning. Um, I'm sure Yvette has more things to say about this.
Thank you, Tosin. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the challenges for me as the research process, and particularly early on in the research process. So the first challenge I had is that obviously I'm a white South African woman working with African women in the network, and I had to position myself very carefully not to perpetuate colonial legacies and power structures. And so that was something that I had to really think about. And one of my strategies, particularly at the symposium, was silence, to facilitate things, but not to speak, not to lead, to not try and be the person that was going to suggest what needed to be done. And actually, Koleka Patuma, who was also a South African writer in the collection of plays, at the end of the festival thanked me for my silence. So silence can be a solution to a problem. And for me, that's quite hard because I'm a chatty person. Then I had to think about how can we facilitate people to have the confidence to share and collaborate and speak. One of the huge colonial legacies is divide and conquer, separate people through fear. And one of the fears is access to resources. There's so few resources that people are afraid to share in case they lose them. So how can we build trust to break down those legacies of colonialism? And you can only do that by building relationships. And we've seen that these relationships are bringing incredible creative solutions, but from the women themselves. And I think that's a key, methodological key for me in this work. Another big issue was translation. So at the moment we're working in English, and that's problematic because it perpetuates another colonial legacy. Where are people in terms of their mother tongue? Where are people in terms of Francophone or Lusophone, Portuguese and French-speaking African playwrights? We need to be bringing them into the network. We're working on this now. And one of the solutions the steering committee have come up with is actually working both on the local level. So we've heard Tosin talk about creating a local AWPN where they can work with these things. Philly has done the same in South Africa and Neo in Botswana. And we have a Cameroonian playwright who's working with local French and English-speaking Cameroonians. So we need to work locally as well as internationally, connecting people on different kinds of levels, but language is an issue. And there's also the language of translation from page to stage or stage to page. So when we were doing the contemporary plays by African women, most of these plays had been staged, but not published. And there was a real issue about how do you translate embodied performance, and a lot of what the communication is embodied, into text. And so, but without being too prescriptive culturally, or not writing too much on a Western frame. So I had to really listen to what the writers were saying about why my questions were odd or not really useful in terms of what I expected from a script, as opposed to what they wanted as artists and the kind of freedom for directing or freedom for developing a script. And one of the most difficult and challenging, but also learning examples for me was the Cameroonian writer, Sophia Mempu, who'd actually written a poem dance drama as a script with no direction for the dance. And for publishers in the Western world, they were published by Matthew, and this was a challenge. And how do we overcome expectations of publishers in terms of what is a script? So these are all challenging our assumptions. But I would say a major solution for all of this is listening. So intercultural negotiation happens on many levels, and we've got to think of the assumptions underpinning everything. And it's important that we assume nothing. We always have to ask, why is the community or the artist asking a question or resisting a question, or just saying that's irrelevant? And what does it mean to translate or develop a network in terms of its structures, its plans, its local and its international communities? But the key to all of this is listening and having it come from the ground up. And for me, that's been a challenge because it's slow, but the solutions have been beautiful and actually moved way beyond me and this project. And for that, I think the fact that this has got a life way beyond my research project is the success of the project.
Thank you so much, Yvette and Tosin. This has been absolutely fascinating.